I can see your face.
Hi, this is Phil. How are you?
Great. Where are you calling from, Phil?
Well, I'm in Kenya working, but currently I'm in Dubai. I'm trying to travel back to Kenya.
Okay, cool. You might just adjust your camera just a little bit down because it's a little bit on the roof. Okay. And Damalia, is that Damalia?
Yes, Damali.
Damali, nice to see you.
Yes.
Where are you right now? Oh, you're on the move, I can tell.
I'm in Kampala.
In Kampala.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm going there in November. Maybe we can
cool.
meet. And we have Paul and we have Nelson. Nelson, you're also from Uganda or in Uganda right now? You're muted.
Yes, I am in Uganda. Pleasure meeting you.
Great. Well, I was going to tell all of you that I saw your bios, and I was going to tell all of you that are in Uganda that I'll be there in November after the Women Leaders in Global Health Conference. That I'm coming to Uganda, and I'll be there until I think the 4th of December.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So after you hear this, if there's anything of interest and you want to arrange to meet, we can I can give you my contact. Okay.
Sure.
Who else do we have on here?
Hi, this is Archana from India.
Oh, hi, Archana. We just have you by call, right? No, I don't see a video.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And I see Guillermo. Guillermo? Hi, where are you from calling in? Is it Peru?
Peru, yes, Lima, Peru.
Excellent, excellent. Another one of my favorite countries. And anybody else?
Jason from Peru.
Oh, and Jason from Peru.
Yes.
Excellent, welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who
This
else?
is Zach. I'm calling from Guatemala City.
Hey, how's it in Guatemala City, Zach?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Good.
Everyone's trying to leave the country right now to head to the U.S., but I'm staying.
Okay. Now, remind me. I've been away. I haven't been following the Guatemala news. Is that because of a hurricane or just political situation?
Yeah, everyone's fleeing Central America because of violence and lack of job opportunities.
It's been going on for a while, hasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else that I haven't said hi to here? And then we can I guess Kimberly wants to do the introduction and we can get started. Okay. So Kimberly, was that Paul said that, is it you or she's going to introduce me?
Yes, I will go ahead and introduce you now. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, wonderfully well.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to introduce today's speaker. Patricia Conrad, DVM, PhD, is a distinguished professor and associate dean for global programs in the School of Veterinary Medicine, as well as co-director of the system-wide University of California Global Health Institute, which you all know well. She received her DVM degree from Colorado State University and PhD from the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, before doing postdoctoral research at the International Laboratory for Research on Animal Diseases in Nairobi, Kenya. Doctoral advocacy in global health is focused on taking a One Health approach that addresses the interconnectedness of humans, animals, and the environment. She was elected to the National Academy of Medicine in 2011, awarded a fellowship in the American Academy of Microbiology in 2012, and selected as an American Association of the Advancement of Science Fellow in 2018. In 2017, she received the American Veterinary Medical Association Lifetime Excellence in Research Award. And she is also the GloCal PI for UC Davis. So we're very happy to get to hear from Dr. Conrad today.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So the only thing, the problem with you all running the slides is I hope you'll be able to do the animation part. That's my fault because I've never been the one to advance the slides on this. But let's get started, okay? First, what I wanted to do is share a personal story. I like personal stories. I hope I get a chance to meet some of you and hear more about your personal stories. I was able to be on some interviews and hear your personal stories, and I always find that's a good way to connect with people and better understand why they're doing what they're doing. So that's kind of the approach I'd like to take, and leave enough time for us to be able to take questions, because I know a lot of you have very different backgrounds from me. I mean, really, I think June's the only one on here that's it's a veterinarian. But I hope that through this talk, as I tell you how we approach research, how I have, and actually I always like working with a team of people, many of which are connected and looking at things from some of the disciplines that you all are interested in, and from the human health perspective, as we take a One Health approach to global health. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what that means. But let me tell you a little about my background. So this might seem strange, this title of this slide. I actually put the slide together when I was asked to speak to a group of about 500 veterinary students at the NIH when I received this Lifetime Excellence in Research Award from the American Veterinary Medical Association. And that's always a big honor when you are acknowledged by your own profession. But I had to be honest with them, because when you talk about research, as you'll see as I tell this little bit of a personal story, that it was a very long time for me before I would have thought of myself as ever being a researcher. If you'd asked me what I thought about research when I was your age, probably most of the time, I don't know how old you all are, but most of that period, I would have said research is definitely not for me. Can we advance to the next slide, please? Okay, I grew up in Colorado. I don't know if any of you have been here. This is Pikes Peak and the Garden of the Gods, and I grew up in Colorado. Next slide. I mean, next, just tap. And here, this is kind of funny, but I have to confess, I grew up in the country, and I started out as a city girl. That first picture in the right-hand corner is me living in town in Colorado Springs, and you can see even back then, my lifetime ambition was to be a cowgirl. I wanted to have horses, and we fortunately moved to the country. And those pictures below, you can see I went on to start training horses. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were given horses that had problems that other people didn't want, and it helped to make me a really good horse trainer. And since I had 5 brothers, you can see them pictured there, 5 brothers and a sister. We wanted to find a sport we could all do together, and for us, that was rodeo. If you want to know more about that, I can tell you another time. But next slide. Growing up in the country, we lived in a situation where we could have a lot of different animals, and these are just some of the different animals that we had: dogs, cats, pigs, goats, chickens, geese, ducks, horses, a few calves, and so from that kind of background, all I ever dreamed of from the age of 8 until a senior in vet school was to become a veterinarian. And click next, please. Become a rural veterinarian, somebody who was able to treat the health problems of all these different species. Back then, we didn't have anything in veterinary school much about wildlife or zoo animals. That actually was a classmate of mine that set up the first zoological program. He's now the director of the Oakland Zoo in California. But I wasn't exposed so much to that, and certainly not to anything global. I was very focused on becoming a rural veterinarian. Next slide. And so in Colorado, I had a goal, and I don't know how this aligns with what's happened in your life, but I knew that if I wanted to become this professional, a veterinarian, there was one place I needed to end up, and that was Colorado State University. But one of the important things I learned in my life is sometimes the path doesn't go as straight as you would like, and sometimes these little deviations that we take for one reason or another turn out to really be blessings, and that's what happened. Next slide. I ended up going to a junior college, and if you know the U.S. system, a lot of people look down at junior colleges, but I went there because of that. They offered me a rodeo scholarship. I wasn't going to take it. I was still going to go to Colorado State University, but finally they were so persistent that I said, okay, I'll come down and I'll visit your school. And when I visited, I knew as soon as I was there was something about this place that this is where I needed to be. And I think that's a life lesson to me, as you'll hear in the story, is that as you go through life, when you get those feelings, you know, despite what your head has already planned for you, and you get those strong feelings that say, you know, I think this is the place you need to be. We call that intuition. There may be a whole lot of factors that go into it that you don't realize, but this turned out to be a really good decision for me because unbeknownst to me, when I started college, my dad in the first quarter, he was going to lose his job, and he never had another job after that. And so if I'd been at a big university, I'd probably really struggled. But being at a junior college, I was able to get financial aid and get a way to support myself and stay in school. And next slide. One of the parts of that was to be able to apply for financial aid, and that's something we have here in the United States for people of low income. And so I got what you call work study, which means you worked and you got paid with a sort of guaranteed job. I did a lot of jobs, but one of the ones that I did was research, a bit of exposure to that, and especially in microbiology. And next slide. My conclusion for that in the research next is that it was not for me, okay? Being in a lab, doing the same thing over and over, which was the kind of research I was exposed to, one of my many jobs, but not my favorite job. So I did make the money. I was able to go to Colorado State University. Next slide. And that's where I started. After 1 year, I started veterinary school. Oh, that's an interesting red line, wherever that came from. Huh. That's not on my slide. Anyway, I started vet school, and I worked really hard in vet school, and I worked I worked in between vacations as I was a waitress, a cocktail waitress. I worked in labs. I did research while I was there at Colorado State University too, in parasitology. Just affirmed that that was not what I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was become a practicing veterinarian in Colorado. And then I did another thing I would advocate for all of you. I think your generation's better at this than we are. And that is, take a break at some point, okay? And in my case, it was a little bit of a vacation. I traveled with my brother to Wyoming, to the Grand Tetons that you can see pictured here. Went for a hike and just paused for a moment, okay? Paused my brain from thinking I knew exactly what I was going to do, and just opened it up to other possibilities, okay? Just sort of free form. And the amazing thing that came to me, next slide, is I don't know where that red line is, but hopefully that doesn't bother you guys too much. Was that I had like an aha moment. I don't know if any of you have had that. I think maybe you have from some of the stories that I've heard and the applications, but a moment of clarity where I just knew that what I hadn't thought about was something I needed to think about, and two things came to me. One, next slide, was that I needed to go and live in another country. So I don't know if you can realize how really isolated we are here in the United States, especially in the middle of the United States sometimes. And I'd never imagined going to another country, especially not living or working in another country. But I had this aha moment, and that just said, you need to go, not just visit. I had no money, not just travel, but actually find a way to go and live in another country. And so I didn't know anywhere that came from, because I had no experience like that. But it seemed to be a very strong feeling. The other strong feeling that came to me, next slide. Does everybody see that red line that's across the slide? Is that?
Yes, I do as well. I don't know where.
It shows on mine.
Pardon?
It shows up.
Yeah. Is there anywhere we can get, because I know that's not on the slides and it's really quite distracting.
Yes, let me try.
Okay. I can keep talking, but it's, yeah, but it's really weird. All right, so let's stop on this slide a minute. So this is kind of weird, and I know you guys, especially all of you in Africa, must think this bizarre, but I'd like you to remember how naive I was. I was really, really naive. A cowgirl from Colorado, never been anywhere, never traveled, never really knew much about other places in the world, okay? But somehow, while I had with this aha moment, one of the things that came to me were images like these, okay, which I don't even know where they came from, but these of really undernourished, starving children in Africa. All I could imagine was maybe it came from the Biafra War, which I had heard a lot about and seen pictures when I was a child. But I had not thought about that as I was, going through my training as a veterinarian and all, until I had this aha moment, and then that comes back. So would you, if you can't get rid of that line, would you like me to see, Paula, if I can pull up my slides?
Sure. If that.
Okay. So what I need to do then, if you can take those off, is I pull up this share screen.
Yes, that is. Yes.
Okay. So when I share my screen, just a second. Nothing. Oh, it's thinking about coming up. I'm sorry, you guys, for this distraction here. Then I need to find the file. It's doing its sort of circle of death here. Okay. It's not giving me a good file format to share.
Let me see if I share it again.
Oh, wait, here we go. Just a second. Maybe this is it. Wait, here we go.
Perfect. Yes, we can see your.
Okay, good. Well, sorry, I think this is the same one that I wanted to show you. Okay, here we go. Sorry. All right, so maybe this was meant to be. Another one of those things, when something goes wrong, I'll just tell you another little life philosophy of mine. When something goes wrong, there's almost always, if you look for it, a lesson learned here. So this is the lesson learned. We should have done it this way to begin with. Okay, so this is, so I don't mean any disrespect for anyone or to think that everything in Africa is like this. Now I've traveled over in many countries in Africa and worked with a lot of people. So these were just images somewhere in my early childhood that had been imprinted. I hadn't thought about, but came back to me as being, something I needed to pause and think about a little bit more. And that was about hunger in Africa. Now, what could I do about that? I mean, I was a veterinarian with no experience, okay, with Africa or with hunger or anything, but it did get me in thinking about, as I pondered, where is this coming from? And I began to research, to read more, to think more, that it helped me to realize that there are a lot of places, as you all know on this and in this group even better than I do, many places, and I was thinking of sub-Saharan Africa more where, like here in the Rift Valley outside of Kenya, that where they're, because of a variety of conditions, climate, soil, culture, people's traditions, it's just not feasible to grow all of the nutritional requirements of people as crops, as plant agriculture. That very important to the health, the well-being, the nutrition of people in these communities is the ability to raise livestock. Cattle, sheep, goats, so we have cattle and goats. And the reason being is that these animals have this amazingly unique digestive system, a rumen system, where they can eat grass, and through all the bacteria and protozoa that they have in their rumen, and the whole process of digestion through what we consider four stomachs, if you will, they're able to break down those grasses and turn them into essential nutrients, the proteins and the energy that if we were just eating grass, would not be able to do. So this is what's really unique about ruminant animals. So with that in mind, and trying to figure out where I as a veterinarian could fit into the big picture of global health. We didn't call it then, but even being able to make a contribution to people who were not as fortunate as I was in being born in the United States. But how in the heck could I do that? I wrote a lot of places. Nobody sent me back any responses. I finally thought, well, the one thing I can do is I'm a good student. How maybe there's some way I can get a start by getting an education, getting some training. This is also what the Peace Corps volunteer told me volunteer coordinator told me when I asked him. So he said, get some more training and then go out and do something that really can make a contribution. So I started looking everywhere for these opportunities, and one of the things that I came across was a Marshall Scholarship. And these are scholarships that are made available by the British government, and Americans can apply for these. You have to be a certain age. It's similar to the Rhodes Scholarship, only they allow you to go to any school in Britain. And the one I picked, actually just by name, I had no experience, I'm being absolutely honest with you, was at the University of Edinburgh. And that was the Center for Tropical Veterinary Medicine. And while I was there, I went to take a course, and I ended up becoming absolutely fascinated by a tick-borne disease, all right? It's called East Coast fever, and it's caused by a single-cell protozoal parasite that's injected by ticks that feed on cattle, and they inject the parasite into the blood of the cattle. The parasites invade the white blood cells. Here you can see a bunch of lymphocytes. And inside each one of these is a developing parasite. This is the parasite, multinucleated here and right here. And the amazing thing about these parasites is when they're like viruses that, can you hold just one sec? Hold on, Dead Buddy. Hey, you guys. Oh, thank you, sorry, guys. I was so loud I couldn't hear myself think. So anyway, back to this. This parasite can actually cause the cells to become immortalized, to essentially transform, to continue to divide, so that they're like tumor cells, like cancer cells, if you will, and it kills cattle. And I was fascinated by this parasite. You could say I fell in love with this parasite. And I'd never heard of any organism that could do something like this. I was absolutely amazed. I had so many questions, and that more than anything else, that absolute passion, intrigue, fascination with a parasite that turned out to be a very important cause of disease in East Africa, was what drew me to research. So when I got started at the University of Edinburgh, I switched from doing a course to doing research. I wanted to try to cultivate the parasites in the red blood cells, because at that time they had just published a continuous cultivation system for Plasmodium falciparum, the most pathogenic malarial parasite of humans, and we wanted to see if we could do the same with Theileria. And so that was what I worked on. It was kind of naive in a way, because I soon discovered that all of the published literature had said that that this parasite didn't multiply in the red blood cells. So that seemed kind of strange, but I found it, in fact, it did. You can see those cross forms here in the red blood cells. Those are the parasites that are dividing. So I wasn't able to get a continuous cultivation system, but we were able to prove that the parasite could multiply, and that had some important implications for the disease. But through all of this, working in the laboratory, and I know some of you are working in laboratories, and I a lot of people love that experience. For me, working on a project in the laboratory like that, even though we were to some extent successful, was still that's not the kind of research I wanted to do. But it did give me a chance to go and work on a disease that occurs in Africa, and I was offered a position at a international research institute there. You can see the pink country, Kenya, for those who aren't as familiar with East Africa. And it was a laboratory called the International Laboratory for Research on Animal Diseases. Now it's called ILRI. It's just outside of Nairobi on the road to Maguga, and that's where I did my postdoc. And my project was focused on developing a vaccine to East Coast fever, along with a lot of other people, and specifically looking at how the parasite was transmitted from African Cape buffalo and wildlife to domestic animals, cattle being the ones. If you have this parasite in cattle, in buffalo, and most buffalo do have Theileria, it doesn't cause any disease. But when it's transmitted to cattle, that's when the parasite is highly pathogenic, and most susceptible cattle, 95 to 98% die. So that's why the vaccine was so important, but very complicated because there were so many different strains and subspecies of the parasite. So I worked on that, but the best part, and this is the part I really want to emphasize, is that it was here in this environment, working in an international research institute, that I discovered a type of research that I really love, and that's team research, where you take people. I was a parasitologist, but working together with tissue culturists, cell biologists, epidemiologists, molecular biologists, immunologists, to answer some really big, important questions about a disease that was having significant economic impact on communities. That was very exciting. And that is where I decided that this was for me. This kind of research I could really get into. This was transformational for me to really realize how much I love this research. And my experience in Kenya, where I was for 4 years, was transformational in a lot of other ways. That's where I met and married another scientist, and we had our first son, who was born at Nairobi Hospital. So this life happens on this journey as you go through. I'm sure some of you may have already had this transformation, or others that are just as impactful in your life. And so balancing that, of course, is another thing we could talk about. So I was there for 4 years in Kenya, and it was time to get out of Africa, not because I was unhappy. Actually, I loved it. I could still be there. But because I had a great opportunity, and that was to go to California, primarily to work with students at the University of California, Davis. It's a great place to work. And the one thing that it had that an International Research Institute didn't have was the opportunity to work with students, which I found really exciting. And I don't want to go through any detail on the research you did, but just to mention, in case any of you have interest down the road, I was very fortunate when I came to UC Davis. I didn't know what I was going to work on. Now, some people might think that unfortunate, but it turned out to be a blessing, because I couldn't work on Theileria. They wouldn't even let us bring slides of Theileria into the country. So I had to find new things to work on. And I was really blessed because the problems came to me. One of the advantages of working in a veterinary school, or probably a medical institution, is that people come to you with their problems. And in this case, it started out with dogs that were dying of hemolytic anemia in Southern California. And it turned out, you might recognize this parasite, looks very much like Theileria, but is the Babesia parasite in dogs. And so we got started out doing a lot of work on this Babesia that we call Babesia gibsoni, that later was renamed by one of my former graduate students to Babesia conradii, after me, I think to make the point that I was wrong in the first place to name it gibsoni. So as a constant reminder, it's now been named after me. But the other thing that we really enjoyed was working on this dog Babesia led us into some collaborations with people at the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, the CDC, in looking at human Babesia, because we hypothesized that some of the human Babesia may have zoonotic potential, so it may have come from animals. And so, long story short, we were able to, working with them, identify a Babesia parasite transmitted by ticks in the blood of humans, that we named a new species, Babesia duncani, because it was very distinctly different from Babesia microti. So that was a fun discovery. And just to emphasize this, the reason that we were able to make that is remembering that although people may describe organisms, pathogens in one species, that there's a close relationship between humans, the domestic animals, and the wildlife that share the same environment, and the possibility that pathogens, disease-causing agents, may or may not cause disease in some species, but they do in others, and they may be transmitted, and ticks and other vectors, a vehicle for that transmission. Other problems I was able to work on since I came to California was a parasite, Neospora. We got in on the ground floor when it was just being discovered, that affects dogs and cattle, and it's turned out to be a worldwide important cause of abortion in cattle. And a neurologic disease of horses, equine protozoal myeloencephalitis, that we discovered a second parasite that causes that disease as well. And when I say we, I mean my graduate students, mostly graduate students. I have more graduate students than postdocs, and my collaborators, all working with a team approach. That's how you can really, I think, make these really impactful discoveries. And then the last one I just want to mention is that we worked a lot on, has given me an opportunity to get out to the beautiful coastal areas of California. Zach probably knows these well. This is along the central coast of California, where we were called in to try to help figure out why sea otters, southern sea otters, which are a federally listed threatened species in California, were dying in higher than expected numbers. And it turned out that in this great mystery, the culprit was these sweet, innocent-looking felids, which shed in their feces a parasite called toxoplasma. And this tough egg-like stage of toxoplasma, shed in the feces of cats, we discovered, was able to be washed from the land into fresh water and into coastal waters, where it could be picked up by sea otters, and be one of the major causes of death in sea otters during the time that we were studying them. And it was also really important because some of you may have heard on the human side, toxoplasma infects a wide variety of animals, probably all warm-blooded mammals and birds, but is best known for the impact it can have on humans. Most humans that get infected have no symptoms or only a flu-like illness, but some are more susceptible to serious disease, and that includes pregnant women that get infected for the first time and can either lose the fetus that gets infected because they're unable to mount an immune response, or have a baby born with congenital defects, blindness, cognitive defects, hydrocephalus, like you see here. And the other reason that's well known is because people who become infected get the parasites, they stay hidden in tissue cysts until the person becomes immunosuppressed, and that can be by severe immunosuppression with HIV or immunosuppression for tissue culture transplantation. And then the parasites can come out of the cyst and go to the brain and cause serious, sometimes fatal neurologic disease. So we worked on toxoplasma, we worked on Sarcocystis neurona, two other, that is the one that causes a problem in horses, but also in sea otters, but also other zoonotic parasites and that are transmitted in the feces, and by zoonotic I mean transmissible between animals and humans, Giardia, Cryptosporidia that you see here. And what we were looking at is how all of these parasites are transmitted from the feces of land-based animals into the ocean, how they can impact other marine mammals, but also humans, and that share that coastal space where it's being washed into, or in some cases eat bivalves, okay, like the mussels that you see here. Mussels, oysters are all bivalves. There's also some snails in there. We've studied those. All of these creatures are able to pick up and in some cases concentrate these pathogens. And so when we eat these organisms, and we like them, just as do the marine mammals, they can be a source of infection. The other thing, I put this wetland in here because another big situation that we looked at was what was the impact of the landscape, whether land is developed or whether land's allowed to be left in a wetland state, in reducing the amount of these fecally transmitted pathogens getting from land to sea. So land to sea transmission of a lot of different organisms has been a big part of our research, and then more recently the impact of land use and climate change on those. And I just threw this in here just to emphasize this, that one of the most fun parts of taking this approach to research is being able to work with people from really diverse disciplinary backgrounds, as you can see here. And that's all part of this One Health approach. I want to just introduce this to, if you haven't heard of it, which is where, in our case, we were often called in because of the animal part of the problem, because there are patients, but for many of you, it's the humans that are your patients. But thinking about the interconnection between animals and humans, whether they're wild animals, domestic animals that we keep as pets or we eat as food, and how closely related they are, and then thinking about the impact of the environment that they share, the ecosystem. So this One Health approach is a sort of a holistic, collaborative approach that we work together, focused on integrated solutions. And that's part of our theme for the School of Veterinary Medicine. We apply it in all our different kinds of research that we do in veterinary medicine, often collaborative with human medicine. And then I just threw this in here to show different ways of thinking about how you integrate and apply in zoonotic disease research. And you all probably know this. This is what we're facing now, how the transmission of organisms, pathogens from wildlife to livestock to people, and how that's increasing, and how by being able to detect these organisms, this is something I know June is working on in wildlife, and we are able to better predict when we're going to get under what circumstances spill over into other animals and into human populations. Vector-borne diseases, waterborne diseases are all things that we're looking at taking a One Health approach to disaster management, which we anticipate will only increase with climate change. And then food safety and security is another really important part of taking the One Health approach. So I just wanted to close by emphasizing, even though I never thought I'd be a researcher, I'm very glad that I am, because this is a little phrase I saw once in San Francisco when I went to apply for the Marshall Scholarship, and I think it's so true. You know, it's not the accolades that you get or the awards or all of those things. It's really you can see right here, success, in my opinion, is liking what you have to do. And if you find this thing in your life, and team research has proven, and working with students has proven to be that for me, then that's the basis on which I feel successful. And it's given me a chance for a simple Colorado girl to travel a lot of places. All of these places and countries in red are some that I've been able to go to because of my profession, because of the research connections and the educational work we do related to research, and at the same time been able to raise a family, and I think they've become sort of addicted to working and getting to know people in a lot of different cultures as well. So anyway, I hope that this personal story has given you a little perspective, given us an opportunity to have a discussion, answer some of your questions. Okay. Now, how do I turn this off? Stop share so I can talk to you. Okie doke. All right, cool. So how do we proceed?
So I think if anyone wants to ask questions, now is your time. Just unmute yourself, or if you have bad connection, you can also just put your question in the chat and I can ask it out loud.
Don't be shy.
Okay. I'll ask.
June.
Hi. So, is someone else talking?
Go ahead, June.
Okay. At what point did you feel like it was right for you to have started your family? Because I know, especially for women in STEM careers, it's always a challenge to determine how to balance your work life and personal life and having a family.
Yeah, no, that's a hard one, and that's another one of those things that you know, maybe you're able to plan, and maybe it just a set of circumstances happen that's where you're at. So I met the person that I wanted to marry while I was in Kenya, and we we went on a honeymoon in the Seychelles, and then it just, you know, 9 months later there's the baby. You know, it kind of goes like that. But personally, having a baby in Kenya was absolutely the ideal situation in my opinion, because I didn't even know it at the time, but probably some of our colleagues here could speak. I you know, when having the everybody was supportive of people having babies. You had a wonderful support system, a great community, and I couldn't have picked a better situation. Much more challenging is coming back and figuring out how to balance your life in the United States. And I think there, maybe one of the keys was making a decision of, I didn't work, I know you might find this funny, but I made a promise to my husband. I didn't work nights and I didn't work weekends, okay, unless I absolutely had to. I just learned that it's the quality of the work, okay, the thought that you put into it. They tried to teach me that in Britain, and I think they did that. It's not how much you work, it's how well you work. And for me, the how well you work meant working well with good people. All right, so I think that's helped me very much in balancing my life and being able to raise my sons. I hope that helps. I don't know that there's ever a perfect time to have a baby, but if you want to, and then you just got to do it. And we're fortunate. I think the system. I mean, I've had a lot of graduate students, staff, colleagues have babies. I have some having them now, and everybody can just work together and accommodate. I think there needs to be that culture.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Somebody else was trying to get in there.
I had a question.
Yes.
About what is your comment on obtaining funding for research, and did it at some way have to direct the path that you take?
Okay, so yeah, I can see. I think what I'm trying to say, so in terms of getting research, yes, it's true that a lot of times we find ourselves, we want to do something, but the funding for that may not be available at the time. So we look around and we say, yeah, but this is what is fundable. Okay, I think that you have to kind of find a balance here. Now, this is a little tricky. I would say my secret to success in this research, and so I've been here at Davis now almost 31 years, and beforehand, also I should tell you, I had no experience writing grants until I came here, because I worked for institutions. I got a scholarship, and so I know how hard it is to start fresh writing grants, okay, and not knowing what you would write about. So as we went along, I think it's really important to work on what you're really interested in and you think is important. Because if you spend your career doing what you think other people want you to do and fund and will fund, you may have to do that in some circumstances, but I strongly encourage you to dig deep and think about what are the things that really fascinate you, that you really love, and find some way to also to start moving towards that. So in my case, I knew I was motivated to work on problems. So if somebody comes with a problem, it helps me to know that this is something that is important, a problem to solve, a question to answer, and then oftentimes that obviously had to do with a disease, a parasite disease or a problem. And then though, I would not just focus on one aspect, what I could do, but try to bring in other people who are, including graduate students, and they've been a big motivator of mine because they really have great questions and ideas, and encourage other people say, okay, so what about the pathology of this? What's the epidemiology of this? You know, how can we develop a diagnostic test for this? Okay, well, we get the diagnostics working there. What about treatment options? So find that, start building your team of people that look at the problem from different perspectives, okay? And then you have more than just yourself to be thinking about the funding sources. So for different problems, there are different funding sources. So for each one of these big areas that I mentioned to you, we would, as a team, we would seek funding from a wide variety of sources. You know, you hear about an investment, diversified portfolio. So that, I think, was a secret, that we would write grants to NIH, NSF, and I should say I only wrote, well, one was mine and one was a graduate student, 2 NIH grants, and we got both of them. But other than that, what I did just wasn't what NIH was going to fund, but it's what I needed to do. So we got money from the National Science Foundation, from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, from a wide variety of foundations, from private individuals in some cases, from industry, because we were working on developing a vaccine. So there were times when we had, and diagnostic tests, industry money. We took small amounts of money that were seed grants when available from our institutions. You know, I think in my bio sketch that I gave you, I listed some of those in the 5-page bio sketch, some of the different sources of funding. And so fortunately here at UC Davis, it does not have to all be NIH funding, you know, as long as it's legal money, okay? You can't go get money from illegal sources, okay? So legal money to support scholarly activity, and they're good with that. So, and the other thing I always try to do is nurture those side projects. You know, I know people tell you, focus, focus, focus. I understand why they say that. That works for some people, but for me, we would have some big questions that the team was interested in. But if a graduate student or a collaborator said, well, you know, what about this? Is this a possibility? And sometimes I'd have to say, well, yeah, that's interesting. I don't think we can get it funded, or we can't get very much funded for it, but let's see what we can do. And let's start doing it on the side, okay, if you have the energy for it. And amazingly, sometimes those side projects that were just small things, but people felt passionate about them, ended up being our big projects that got funded. And so that's like the horse problem, the equine protozoal myeloencephalitis, even the sea otter. We were working on the cattle disease, and who would have thought you could get big funding for working on sea otters? We didn't at first. We started with a few $1,000s, then it was $10,000, then it was $100,000, then it was $2.5 million, and then it was, you know, it just built on like that. So I know people think a lot of what's the most profitable area, but I'd ask you to think, what moves me? What am I most passionate about? What do I think is most important to do? Because you'll be able to write a better grant proposal if you really believe in what you're doing. Does that answer your question, in my opinion?
Yes, please. Thank you.
We have a question.
Okay, Pat, I actually have a question from Vincent here, whose audio isn't working, but he's been on the call.
Yeah.
So this has 3 parts. I'll read the whole thing first. You mentioned your children have an addiction to learning about different people and cultures.
Yeah.
3 questions. What have been their outlets to learning about others? What have you noticed, or have they told you directly has directly influenced their interest? And what has surprised you most about their interest?
Oh, those are good questions. Thank you. I love talking about my children. So my sons are 28 and 31 now. One born in Kenya, one born since we came to California. The oldest is Alex, we call him Alejo, and the youngest is Ian. And I think they were very fortunate. They got, from the time they could toddle around, they got interested in the natural world. Their dad is an entomologist, and wherever we went, you know, and he did a lot of work in West Africa. We met in East Africa, but then when we moved to the United States, West Africa and Latin America, and so we tried to take our kids there. And of course, it starts out with looking at the insects, the bugs, what's different, you know, but that, and then it went to fish, and then it went to you know, the people. Actually, I think their interest in people took longer to develop than their interest in the natural world. But now they both speak Spanish, and they work a lot in working with people. So I think what I found most interesting was, yeah, their fascination with the natural world. So a lot of what I do now is advocating One Health, and people then hear that my one son is a wildlife photographer. You can see these are some of his pictures in my office right here. Whoa, can we show them? Just say, there we go. Those are from South Africa. Well, I can't know if I can show this right now. Anyway, so he's a wildlife photographer, but he does it in a way to try to help people understand conservation and science. And the other one works on setting up investments in sustainable ocean fishing, okay, in fisheries in Chile. And so I think the fact that they were so keen in the natural world, and then they became really interested in how different people view their natural world, and how do they help to understand how people view their natural world, and what where science and economics and storytelling, either with videos or photos or through written word, helps to share that love of nature and of science. Does that answer the question? I get off on my kids and I'll babble forever. Vincent, Kimberly, did I answer Vincent's questions?
I think so. I was waiting to see if he was gonna. Yes, he put yes. Yes, you did.
Okay. But I think all of you are being scientists and you're into global health. And I know some people say, oh, well, how does that work with a family? Well, take your kids with you, okay? If you choose to have kids and you choose to have a partner, and not everybody does, but if you do, take them with you. They will see more of the world. They will become better citizens, and I think it helps tremendously when your children get a chance to see what you do and understand that, because that's how they find their own passion. It may be very different from yours. My kids have no interest in medicine. They don't. They like field research, but not the kind of mix that I do. But that's okay. I've learned a lot from them. I think that's the best part about being a parent. It's like the best part of being an educator, a teacher, is what you learn from this new generation, all the way along the line. They keep us fresh. They keep us questioning ourselves. They keep us, thinking about that new ideas, their ideas, okay? And they inspire us to want to help them, okay? Which is why I'm doing this call, because I'm inspired by all of you, and love seeing any ways that we can help you.
Okay, now we also have a question from Archana. Her question is, what are the things a budding researcher should consider during networking or building a team, and then to sustain it over a lifetime?
Okay, so what are the things you should think of? I know some people, and I heard somebody telling us, is when you're picking collaborators, think about who has the toolbox that you need. I don't agree with that necessarily. Okay, that strategy may work for people, but what has been important to me that I've found has held true through all these years is get to know people, not just what they do, but how do they think? All right, what do they value? What is their perspective on things? And you do that by getting to know people. Sometimes you have to have a little test drive collaboration, but at the end of the day, to me, I hate to say secrets, but I've had to think about it. What has allowed me to be successful is work with people that you respect and that you trust. Okay, it's if they have skills that you don't have, that's nice. But even if they are the same discipline, if they come from a different background, a different culture, a different training, they are likely, even say in my case as a parasitologist or protozoologist, to view the world and view our problems differently. So I really believe this, because I've seen it so many times, that having diverse perspectives and coming onto the team is important. Be prepared to to commit the time and energy to learn how to communicate with people that think differently from you, because it's not easy. It's always easier to talk to people that think the same as we do, but I think you're going to learn more from working with people that think differently. But you do have to build that respect, and trust. All right, because one thing I have found is that if you don't trust somebody, you shouldn't be working with them. And if for whatever reason they don't trust you, and sometimes it's assumptions that people make, they think, well, this person's this background, so we can't trust them, or this is their, they come from this university that hasn't been very trustworthy, and all those things. But test drive that, because that individual may be trustworthy. But at the end of the day, if you don't trust them and they don't trust you, it's not going to work. Okay, you really need to. And then once you find those good collaborators, you won't always be working with the same people. I believe, again, diversity, get new members and everything. But I think that you'll find it to be very rewarding. Does that answer your question? So I guess the bottom line on networking is, as you reach out, don't be afraid to get to know a wide variety of people. You may never know when that person is going to be helpful and how you'll be able to help them. And sometimes people that you meet and you don't see how you're going to connect, and then 10 years later, this person could end up being your most valuable colleague, or reappear in some other form and be your boss, or be your bench mate, or your office mate, or but so take time for relationships. I guess that's what I'd say. Take time to get to know people and to be known yourself, so that you can find the right connections for collaborations. Does that help?
Great. She wrote, thanks a lot. Great insight.
Other questions?
And I think, to be respectful of everyone's time, I think we have time for one last question. We don't have that much time we need. If not,
Okay, let me just say that for all of you, I hope, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there in Washington, D.C. when you went through your orientation. I mentioned that I am going to be in Uganda in November. So those of you who are in Uganda, if for any reason you want to get together, send me an email and at paconrad@ucdavis.edu. I think it's on the bio sketch and all. Or if you're coming to UC Davis, okay? If you're any of you, anyway, I would hope that our paths cross, and if at any time they do, you know what I look like now, and you are always welcome to contact me. If you email and I don't write you right back, just know that is probably because of the overwhelming email. So write again, and I'd be very happy to Zoom or connect with you. Okay, if you think I have anything that could be of use to you, okay, in your careers.
thank you so much.
You are so welcome, and good luck to everybody. You're getting a great experience here, and I hope you're having a great experience, and that I hope it's launching you on a career that's really gonna fulfill your dreams and be very satisfying.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Great, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.